Hello, hello. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Photo Retouching in Lightroom. My name is Aaron Nace of Phlearn.com, and I'm so excited to be hanging out with you today. We're going to have an absolute blast. We are going to be working in Lightroom for the next 2 hours. So many cool things today that I want to go over. But before we get started, let's just take a second and see what's going on in the chat. It's so good to see you guys here. Let's go ahead and just expand this out so I can see everyone here in the chat. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Alrighty, here. Let's just reload this page so I can see you guys here. All right, so great to see you guys. Let's see. We're going to be working, Sig asks, are we going to be working in CC or Classic? We're going to be working in Lightroom Classic today. It's my Classic. I've been using it for many years, and I absolutely love Lightroom. It's come leaps and bounds over the last few years, and we're going to be exploring some of the new features as well. All right, so good to see everyone. I'm so excited. Danielle, hey, how you doing? Steve, good to see you. Kinga, good to meet you. Mallory, so fantastic to see you. Andrea, good to see you. Lone, Mia, fantastic. Great to see everyone here in the chat. I'm in Chicago. I'm in my house, hanging out and being, working from home. I've got business on the top, casual on the bottom. I got my sweatpants on. I'm sure half of you guys are wearing your sweats as well, so we're all in the same boat. Well, before we get into Lightroom, let's go ahead and take a look at today's schedule. So exciting. This morning we saw some getting started in logo design with Alex. He was working on some coffee logos in Illustrator. Super cool stuff. We just saw our daily creative challenge with Kathleen. She did really great things with the frame tool in Photoshop. So if you haven't already done so, be sure to upload your daily creative challenges to our Discord. We're going to be taking a look at that later in today's broadcast. Photo retouching with me, Aaron Nace. And later we're going to be taking a look at our Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Andrew. Then make sure to stick around for editorial design with Shanti. And then we've got Adobe XD with Andrea. And of course, Doodle Therapy with Alice Lee. That's going to be fun. Doodle Therapy. I don't think I've ever done that in my life, but sounds like something I need. And then we've got a design off with Voodoo Val and Wade. We've got such a fun day. There we go. And there we go. Let's just pop it back on there. Again, my name is Aaron Nace of Phlearn.com, and today we're going to be learning some Lightroom. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be learning today. Let's just change our little screen here to Lightroom. We have a lot of really great images to go over today. So we've got images from my personal trips in my life. We've got some images from my good friend Pierre Lambert. We're going to be linking him up in the chat as well. And I pulled images from a bunch of my different trips and just kind of like things from everyday life. And we've got a couple goals with today's broadcast. The first goal, let's go full screen with this so we can do a nice one-on-one here. There we go. Fantastic. So the first thing that I want to go over today is Lightroom presets. So Lightroom presets are incredibly powerful. Basically, you can apply edits to your photos in Lightroom and then save those edits as presets. And one of the big reasons that I wanted to cover Lightroom presets today is because a lot of us are stuck at home right now. And for photographers and general artists and creatives, that may mean that some of our jobs have, it's been difficult to earn income during this time, especially for us who are freelancers. So I wanted to kind of open a little door for you as a way to not only enhance your creative skills in Lightroom, but also try to make some money on the side. And Lightroom presets are a really great way to do that. So we're going to be going over kind of the process that I've used over the last couple of years to both create Lightroom presets in Lightroom, and then we're going to talk briefly about creating marketing images and even selling these Lightroom presets online. Now, both I, as well as a lot of my friends, do create Lightroom presets and sell them online, and it can be a really great source of extra income for you. So I really wanted to just like provide this as a resource and an opportunity for you, and we're gonna take you from start to finish through that entire process. So we're gonna start off showing you how to actually create your Lightroom presets in Lightroom. Lightroom Classic, by the way. We're gonna give you some tips and tricks on how to create presets that are gonna work for a little bit more of a global, like the more images that those presets can work with, the better. We're gonna show you how to export out your before and afters. I'll show you some really cool things we can do with virtual copies, and that's gonna allow us to basically have our images and plus any presets that we apply to those as well. Then we're gonna bring those into Photoshop. I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks that we've used over the last few years on how to market your images and your Lightroom presets. And then we're gonna go briefly over some of the platforms and tools that we've used at Phlearn, as well as friends of mine have used to actually sell those Lightroom presets as well. So we're doing a little bit of multidisciplinary things here, but the whole goal here is not only to show you like the power of these presets, but I also wanna open this up as a door for you. So if anyone is looking for a little bit of an extra income boost, this is fantastic. And I gotta say, over the last few years, we've sold Lightroom presets not only on Phlearn, but as well as on other sites. I've done it personally, and it really can add a secondary income source for you. So I just wanted to provide that for you as a little fun thing to start off today. Now, if we have time, we're also going to be going into some more advanced editing and really show you some of the wonderful things that that we are doing here in Lightroom. Alrighty, so that's kind of a brief overview for today, and then tomorrow, join us, we're gonna be doing even more advanced work in Lightroom as well, showing you how to do HDRs, combining images, how to edit batches of photos, and things like that. So we got a really fantastic couple of days. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and start off here in Lightroom. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead, pop into Lightroom. You should be able to see me as well as Lightroom. All right, and just making sure, fantastic, making sure that everything is good in the chat. All right, good deal. So let's go ahead and start off with a couple of photos. Now, we're gonna be starting off with a trip that I took last year to Michigan with my partner, Katie. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna just use collections. So I've loaded up a bunch of images here in Lightroom. I'm just gonna make myself a little bit smaller in this window so we can see, there we go, so we can see more of the images and less of me, more of the images. Fantastic. So we're starting off with these images here that are from a trip I took with my partner, Katie. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. And you can see the first part of this series, we actually went apple picking in Michigan. So let's kind of go through these images and show you guys some of these photos. They're so cool. And this was just like a bright sunny day. I live in Chicago, by the way, and for those of you who don't know, Chicago gets really cold around winter time. So in the fall, we always like to do things that are very seasonal. So the fall of last year, we went apple picking in Michigan because it was like, oh, it's the perfect season for this sort of thing. So, you know, me being the photographer that I am, twisted Katie's arm into taking some photos here. You know, and we took some like really cute photos, and then we went, we did actually a little camping trip by Lake Michigan, and so this is kind of looking out at sunset, and then I wound up taking some pictures, some long exposure photos here, basically at night as well. So we're gonna create Lightroom presets to go over there. All right, fantastic. So we're gonna create some Lightroom presets, starting off with our first batch of images. These are our apple picking images. Now, of course, these are really great straight out of camera, but creating a Lightroom preset is going to allow everything to kind of like come together and be a little bit more unified. So I've got a couple pieces of advice. Let's just switch this back to a full screen. I would like to do like a full screen, a full screen when we're, doing like a little one-on-one here. So I have a couple pieces of advice for you when creating Lightroom presets, especially if we're thinking about marketing these and possibly selling these online. Okay, my first piece of advice is to come up with a few different themes ahead of time. So these can be things like bright and airy, where we make photos like nice and bright and sunshiny. You can do like dark and moody themes. You could do like warm, summery themes. You could do fall themes. You can do winter themes. And then you can change the coloring in those different themes to match, to work well with the photos, and also kind of like give a little bit of an easier path for people to wind up purchasing your Lightroom presets. Again, we're not only focusing on the presets, but kind of like the whole line all the way to the end purchase. So my advice for you, if this is something that you're interested in at all, is to start off with a couple of different preset packs in mind, and then go through the process of creating those preset packs with like, and we're gonna do it here, and then choose the photos that work well. That way the end user has a little bit better of like, okay, I want a dark and moody look on my photos, or I want a bright and airy look on my photos, or I want a fall look on my photos. So it's gonna really help the end user out. So I recommend creating those kind of like predefined packs in your mind first, and that's where we're gonna get started here with our apple picking season. Okay, so when we get started here, we're gonna just start off with the our first image in this series and start making some edits. So let's just go ahead and double click. We're gonna start with this photo right here. Okay, so the first thing that we wanna do when creating a Lightroom preset is go into our develop module. There we go. So let's go ahead and put our develop module on, and we're gonna go ahead and start off on the right-hand side. And there are so many different options of things that we can do. Now, basically anything that you do in the develop module in Lightroom can be turned into a Lightroom preset. So I'm gonna start off just making this a little bit warmer. And in my mind, we're creating like a fall, like summer day preset. So I want these to be warm. We've got a nice bright sunshine here. And I kind of like want to enhance the sunshine a little bit. So we're gonna take our temperature and we're just gonna make this a little bit warmer. So I'm gonna grab my temperature and just drag this to the right already. Get to the right already. We're just gonna drag this to the right a little bit, and you're gonna see it's gonna kind of give us a little bit of a warmer feeling. Now, I also wanna make sure that my shadows are brought up a little bit. I don't want too dark shadows in this preset. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring those up, and keep in mind, this will happen globally across all of your images. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, everyone. I was still on the full screen of me. I apologize there. Okay. There we go. Fantastic. Okay. So let's just start that over again. I apologize, everyone. So here we go. So this is our image straight out of camera, and we're going to start off by warming it up. So go ahead and hit D for your develop module here in Lightroom. There we go. And we're just gonna go ahead and bring our color temperature a little bit warmer. Thanks for letting me know in the chat, everyone. I really appreciate you guys letting me know that you're only seeing my face. Imagine the whole broadcast, you're just seeing my face. All right, this is why the chat is so wonderful. So let's go ahead and start off by warming up our color temperature. I'm just gonna click here and drag to the right. Fantastic. And this is just gonna give the images a little bit more of like a sunshiny, warm feeling. Now, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and bring up my shadow levels. So let's just crank those up just a little bit because I want this like nice daylight warm images. Okay, now we're going to bring our clarity up a little bit as well. This is just going to kind of like bring things into focus. It almost acts like sharpening, but it basically just makes all your details pop a little bit more. I love the clarity slider. Just try not to go too far with it. Okay, and then the next thing we're gonna do is bring our vibrance up because I really want Yeah, that's looking good. I'm trying to protect our skin tones, but I really want these reds and these greens to really shine. Now, if you want to target specific colors like reds or greens and things like that, you can actually do that right down here in your HSL/color. So I'm going to go right over here to our hue, saturation, luminance. Let's go to our saturation. Now, a little trick that I use is instead of using my sliders right here on the bottom right, I actually grab this little icon here, which allows you to click on the colors in your image. And that way it'll just target the exact colors that you want to change. So let's go ahead and click on these greens, and I'm just going to drag this up, which is going to increase the saturation of these greens. There we go. That's looking fantastic. So kind of bringing the saturation of those greens up and doing a little bit with these reds as well. All right, at this point we're looking good. I think our color temperature maybe is just a little bit too warm. It's looking a little bit, I don't know, like her skin was getting a little bit too warm. All right, and let's go ahead and bring the highlights down just a little bit as well. So this is looking really great. Now, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna add a little bit of color into the shadows and into the highlights for this preset as well. And there's two ways that I would recommend doing that. So the first way that you can use is split toning here on the right-hand side. And the other way is using your tone curve. Okay, so the tone curve is super, super powerful. You can click this little icon here on the very bottom to change your point curve. All right, so if you don't see exactly what I see, basically we've got, like, if you've used curves in Photoshop, you'll see that this basically looks like exactly like the curves, because it pretty much is. Right over here, we're gonna click on this tone curve. And this is actually how I prefer to edit in Lightroom. So by default, you're gonna see highlights, lights, darks, and shadows. And this is fantastic, but if you click on this icon right here on the bottom right, there we go. Fantastic. On the bottom right, now you're gonna see I have access to RGB, which is a combination of my red, green, and blue channels, and I have access to my red, green, and blue channels independently, which is gonna allow me to actually bring some color and definition into the highlights, midtones, and shadows. So let's go ahead and pop over to my blue channel. Now I wanna show you just a super quick split tone that you can do. You can actually grab your shadows here. There we go. And whoops. Clicked on the wrong thing there. All right, let's go back here. All right, so we can actually grab our shadow levels here and start to move these around. I'm just gonna delete that control point by right-clicking on it. So you can see by bringing up our blue point, I'm actually bringing some blues into the shadows of my image, just like we could do this on in Photoshop. So we're gonna do it. I'm gonna bring a little bit of blue into my shadows, and now I'm gonna take this slider and I'm gonna bring some yellow into my highlights. Not a lot, we just wanna keep this nice and subtle. I find that these effects really work well when they're subtle. Next, I wanna bring a little bit of green into my shadows as well. So let's just pop a little bit of green, just keeping this nice and subtle. And then we're gonna go to our red channel, and I'm just gonna pull a little bit of reds into our midtones. And that's just gonna kind of warm up skin and make it look a little bit more lively. Okay. So this is looking really great. Now, we can show a before and after here by clicking on the bottom left. Let's just go ahead and see, this is our before image and our after image. So you can see just a couple little adjustments here in Lightroom, very, very powerful. Now, at this point, I would recommend fine tuning things a little bit, and having your before and after visible at the same time. That's just gonna help you kind of get a better idea of what you're doing with your photos. So I think it's looking really good. I'm gonna bring my color temperature down just a little bit. There we go, because it was just a little bit too warm. Fantastic. And I'm gonna bring my exposure up a tiny bit as well. Oh, that's looking really, really good. All right, so we can see like a big difference between the before and after. Again, all of this is completely non-destructive. You can change these things at any time. Now you also have a history slider here on the left. So if I want to go back in my history and try to see, oh, what did it look like, earlier, you can go ahead and check that out. All right, cool. So Steven is saying, wow, looks great. Steve says, such awesome tools. I know, Lightroom is incredibly powerful. This is like my go-to software as soon as I take photos, they come into Lightroom for organization, and I'm also using Lightroom for all of my raw editing, and then for my final adjustments, then we go into Photoshop. Okay, so this looks really good at this point. Now, what we want to do is go ahead and create a preset out of this look, and then I can apply this preset to all of my images. So to create a Lightroom preset, it's super easy. It couldn't be easier. Here in your develop module, just simply find your preset slider here on the left, your little preset window, and click on the plus icon. There we go. Fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and go to create preset. Fantastic. So with these presets, we're just going to call this fall. Well, let's just call this bright and vibrant. There we go. I think that fits. You want to choose a name that like fits pretty well with what you're actually doing here. So bright and vibrant. Now, what you want to do here in your settings is make sure that you choose basically only the settings that you actually wound up changing in your image. If you wind up adjusting other settings, like we didn't do any lens correction, so it makes sense to not have lens corrections checked. So let's go ahead and uncheck that. We're gonna uncheck our transform. We're gonna check our effects because we didn't do anything like that as well. We didn't do any of these guys here. We didn't do any split toning. There we go. We did use a tone curve. We did use vibrance. We didn't use any dehaze. So all of those look really, really good. So it's just a great idea to go ahead and just check the settings that you actually changed. That way someone can pull in the presets that you made and still make their changes. All right, so we have a bright and vibrant preset. Let's go ahead and hit create. And here we can see that shows up under user presets. So here we have bright and vibrant, so which is really, really cool. Okay, so we've made our preset. Let's go ahead and hit G to get back to our grid view. So we're gonna hit the plus icon and just make our images a little bit larger. There we go. And now I wanna apply this preset to other photos in the group. I wanna see how this looks on other photos. And this is another very important step when creating presets, because sometimes you'll create a preset on one photo and apply it to another photo and it like doesn't look right. Maybe you made it too bright, or maybe you made the color temperature too warm, and you want to make sure that it fits with a variety of different photos before you start, publishing this online and maybe even selling it. The reason there is because if someone downloads these presets and they apply it to their images and they're like, oh, this does not work at all, you want to make sure that you want to avoid that if possible. So the best way to avoid that is basically to just to apply that preset to as many of your images as possible, and then you can simply see whether it works. Okay, now we've created our preset. I've got one more piece of advice for you when it comes to applying presets to your photos in Lightroom, and that's to use virtual copies. So a virtual copy will basically allow you to create multiple different versions of your photographs, and each of the different versions, you can apply a different Lightroom preset to those versions. So you can have your originals and your virtual copies. All right, let's show you how to do it. It's really, really cool. So to get started, I'm gonna go back to this image. We're gonna go to our develop module, and we're gonna go all the way back to import. So it's going back to the original, but don't worry, we've saved all of our changes as a Lightroom preset. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and click click on all of my images here in the apple picking. All right, and Sig mentions the same thing. He says, that's the problem with my purchased Lightroom presets. Most don't work at all with my images. So yeah, this is definitely a thing that we want to make sure we're getting correct, because if you purchase a Lightroom preset and it doesn't work with your images, you're going to be like, well, I'm never going to purchase from that person again. So both choosing a theme is super important. So saying early on, like, this is my, vibrant theme. So I would, in the marketing materials for this Lightroom preset pack, I would say, hey, use images that were shot during the day that already have nice and vibrant colors that you want to boost those, okay? And then create another preset pack that's maybe like a dark and moody preset pack, and then instruct the people to say, like, these are the types of photos this is going to work well with. That way, the user, the end user, has their expectations in order, so they can know, okay, I've got this set of photos, here's the look that I want, let me get the preset pack that's perfect for that look. Okay, fantastic. So I went ahead and hold Shift and clicked on all of my images here in my apple picking series. We're gonna right click here and I'm gonna go down to create virtual copies. Now, virtual copies are one of my favorite things about Lightroom because it allows us to create multiple versions of all of our photos. So let's go ahead and click on create virtual copies. Now, the cool thing about this is that these virtual copies don't really take up much space on your computer. It's not duplicating the files, it's just duplicating a reference of them here in Lightroom. Okay, now what we can see is we have a copy of every single one of these images. So here's my next piece of advice. When you're creating virtual copies, I highly recommend giving them color ratings that are going to allow you to choose those virtual copies really, really easily. And you can do this using your keyboard shortcuts on the top of your keyboard. So 1 through 5 on the top of your keyboard are going to be rating from 1 through 5, and then 6 through 9 will allow you to apply colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the number 6. And you can see that it applies the red label to these photos. So let's go ahead and just click off of them real quick. And now I went ahead, because they were still selected from my virtual copies, now it's very easy for me to see which is my original and which is my virtual copy, because all of the virtual copies are red. Now, I can also go up here in my attribute, there we go, right up here in my attribute filter, and I can say just show me the red images. There we go. So let's go ahead and click on this, and now I can see just the images that we flagged as red. So the benefit here is these are all of my virtual copies. Okay, so now that I've got my virtual copies up, I can go ahead and assign my Lightroom presets. So there are a few ways to apply Lightroom presets, all right? Really, truly, like the easiest way that I usually use is I just go to Develop Module and then click on Bright and Vibrant. There we go. And you can do this with each one of the images in your scene. So you can just click right here through your film strip and go ahead and apply Bright and Vibrant to all of these images. And you guys can see, let's just take a look at our befores and afters here. There we go. How the Bright and Vibrant really is working pretty well for this entire series. I would say each one of these images is benefiting from the Bright and Vibrant Lightroom preset that we just made. There we go. There's our original one. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and click on our next one. And it really couldn't be easier. Bright and Vibrant. This one looks good, but it's a little bit too warm. The color temperature is a little bit too warm on that one. So I have the choice, do I want to change my Bright and Vibrant preset, or do I want to do some adjusting after the fact? There we go. And this is Bright and Vibrant here. All right. This is looking really, really good. And this last one on Bright and Vibrant as well. Okay, so let's hit G to get back to our grid view. And now all of these photos have our Bright and Vibrant preset applied to them. Now, when you, let's say you're using presets that you find online, you can always adjust them. So this photo I thought was just a little bit too warm as far as my color temperature is concerned, but you can always go into your Develop module and simply lower down your warmth here after the fact. So that's my other suggestion here. There we go, that looks great. My other suggestion is if you are using Lightroom presets that you download online, don't forget that you can still make adjustments to your photos afterwards. And this is usually going to be the case that you need to do it because it's very hard to make a Lightroom preset that's just gonna work perfectly with every single image. But as you can see here, we did a really, really great job here matching our lighting. So now what I wanna do, let's go ahead and check this out. I'm gonna turn off this color rating. Let's turn off our red color rating. I'm gonna hit the minus sign on my keyboard quickly here, and then I'm gonna hold Shift and click on my first image and go all the way to my last. Fantastic. First image all the way to last, and then we're gonna go ahead and hit N for our survey view. Fantastic. So this looks really, really good. We have our original image And then we have our warm image, the original image, and then our warmed up image. So we can see all of our images side by side, and I think this is actually working really well for us. Okay, so just a little brief summary. We've added Lightroom presets to everything, and now what we can do is start the next stage in our journey, which is basically helping you guys prep things for marketing and or advertising your Lightroom presets. So my big suggestion here is to create before and after photos, so everyone knows, hey, these are the Lightroom presets, and like they actually are good, and they're going to enhance your photos. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to create a grid, a 3x3 grid in Photoshop using your images. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you how to do it. Now, all of these images look great to start with. I'm going to hit Shift-Command-E for export. Okay, now in this case, I'm not going to rename any of my images. They're all going to come in, and my virtual copies are going to be labeled as well, so that's fantastic. My image format, JPEG sRGB, looks great. I am going to go ahead and resize these on the long edge. We're just going to put 1200 pixels for now. Okay, and we're going to choose this folder later. That looks good. So let's go ahead and click on export. So we're going to go ahead and just put, there we go. I'm just going to put these on my desktop. There we go. And fantastic. Let's just call this exports. All right. It's going to just take a second. So here we are in Photoshop, and you can see Lightroom is still exporting in the background. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a new document. Let's hit Control-Command-N for new. All right, and now that we're in Photoshop, I'm actually going to change my screen a little bit, but we're gonna make this 1080, there we go, by 1080. All right, so 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels, and let me just go ahead and move. There we go. All right, trying to move me here in my little window. Nope, that's not right. Come on, you can do this. There we go. Let's just move me up to the top right, and we're gonna make me a little bit bigger. All right, there we go. Fantastic. I'm in the right spot now. Thanks for staying patient with me. So we made a 1080 by 1080 image. Let's hit F4 full screen. So the next thing that I want to do is, and this is actually kind of similar to what Kathleen was doing in the Adobe Live, the Daily Creative Challenge. We're not going to be using the frame tool, but I do want to create a 3x3 grid, and this is going to help us for showing before and after of the Lightroom presets. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and we're just going to fill this with black. There we go. So let's fill this with black. Now I'm going to hit Control-Command-T for transform. And I'm gonna just go ahead and lock this to the left side of our window. And then I'm gonna change my width. There we go. My width and my height. This is gonna be 33.33. All right, let's go ahead and just put this on the very top left. There we go. This is looking good. I'm gonna hit Control-Command-A to select all and then pop that on the top left. So this is gonna be our first grid icon, basically. So now what we're gonna do is just duplicate this a couple times. So we're gonna hit Control-Command-J to duplicate this. There we go. Fantastic. And let's go ahead and put this on the right-hand side and then move this one right to the center. Okay, so now we have our top row. So let's just go ahead and group those. We're just gonna call this top. Control-Command-J is going to allow us to duplicate it. All right, and let's just move that right up. There we are, and then Control-Command-J one more time allows us to duplicate this as well. And we're just gonna call this bottom. Okay, so our grid is set up. We're totally good to go. The next thing I wanna do is bring in our images. So we're gonna go to File, I'm gonna go to Script, and we're gonna go to Load Files into Stack. There we go. Fantastic. load files into stack. Let's just go ahead and hit on browse, and we're gonna go to our desktop and our Adobe Live. Fantastic. We'll go to exports, and you can see each one of my images, I have the file name and then I have a number 2 after it. All right, so let's go ahead and shift click on all of those images and hit open, and this is just gonna open them all into the same document. Fantastic. Alrighty, got some love in the chat. Thank you so much, Gail, saying you love the Photoshop tutorials. Thank you so much. So great to see you guys. All right, Marfa, hello from Chicago. I'm in Chicago too. It's a beautiful day outside, actually. Loving it. We've had such a nice summer in Chicago. I've made it my daily, basically because I'm just like at my house all the time now, I've made it my daily mission to spend at least 1 hour outside in the sun every single day. So I've been going to the park across the street, and it's been fantastic. Okay, so this looks really good. Now you can see I've got all of my images, and the befores and afters are here. So because we created virtual copies in Lightroom, it made this process much easier because all of my images are ready to go. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and grab our images. Let's just click on these images. I'm gonna hold Shift, click on all these images, and then I'm gonna use my Move tool to go from one image to another. There we go. And we're gonna click on F for full screen, and we're looking really, really good. Now, basically all of my images are ready to go. So let's go ahead and start off with our top images. So this is just a really, really good way to create a grid of photos. So now that we have these images on the very top, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just pull them down by hitting Control or Command open bracket. Okay, and we're gonna put those right above our squares. So if you guys remember from just a second ago, there we go. Let's go ahead and put this on the top. Fantastic. If you remember from just a second ago, we made just a bunch of black squares, right? Like I made, you can see it here. We made a black square on the top left, top middle, and top right. Now what we're gonna do, let's say we want these photos to be only visible where those squares are. What we're gonna do is hold Option Command and hit G, and that's gonna clip those images to that square. So they're only visible where that square is now. And because it's the same images at the same time, I can simply turn one image off and on, and we get a before and after. So this is gonna really help out with any type of marketing that you do to show, hey, what are these Lightroom presets actually doing? All right, and don't worry, if I'm moving a little bit too quick for you, don't worry because we're gonna be doing this a bunch. So basically, I'm just taking these images and clipping them. Fantastic. So we're just clipping them to these black squares that we made. And this is such an easy technique. So just make your black squares, and then you can use this as a template for basically all of your images moving forward. All right, very, very easy to do. And when I'm moving these images around, keep in mind that I'm actually moving 2 at a time. I'm moving the first image and its virtual copy at the same time. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and just hit Option Command G. We'll clip those and just make this a little bit smaller. And you can move these around too. So, you know, we're creating our grid right now. There we go. Let's go ahead and make those visible. But you can move these photos around simply by choosing a different location on your grid. There we go. So just kind of popping them into location here. We're almost done with this. I know today's focus I want to do mostly in Lightroom, but I did feel like this was a super valuable skill to have to be able to show you guys how to create this before and after. All right, and here we have on the bottom. Okay, so again, I'm just literally clipping these. So I'm using clipping masks to constrain these. There we go, to constrain these just to these little squares that I made. All right, and then I'll show you guys how to save out your before and after. Fantastic. All right, there we go. We've got one more pack of images. We're almost done here, everyone. Almost done. I know it's a little bit on the tedious side, but check this out. Now here at the very top, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna hit M for my marquee tool. We're gonna make a little white line. So just made a marquee selection and filled it with white. Controller Command J is gonna allow me to duplicate that. And I'm just pushing it over to the left here. Then we're gonna make another duplicate and I'm gonna rotate this. So just click right up here and hold Shift as you do so. There we go. Let's hit Control or Command T. I'm just gonna stretch this out. Fantastic. And then Control or Command J one more time. And we'll just go ahead and group those and call these grid lines. Fantastic. So this is really, really nice. It's going to allow you, there we go. Let's just move that down a little bit. It's going to allow you to create before and after images that are going to help you. And obviously you could use these type of grids for many, many different things. If you were doing a wedding album, you could do this sort of thing as well. So these are all my after images, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save this out now. I'm going to hit Option Shift Command S for save. There we go. And let's just go ahead and choose this as a JPEG. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and save this out. And we'll just put this in the same location here. So we're going to put our desktop here, live broadcast. And I'm just going to call this marketing. There we go. And we're going to just call this preset. There we go. Vibrant. And these are the after images. Okay. So I realize we did a lot of setup to get to this, but check this out. This is when the super, super cool things happen. So now that we have everything already set up, if I want to show the before, literally all I have to do is turn off the after layers. But as you can see, they're in the exact same place as the befores. So when you want to show, maybe you do an animated GIF of the before and after, which I can show you guys how to do that as well, of the before and after, it's really, really easy because they're going to be in the exact same place. So it's going to be very obvious which are the befores and which are the afters. There we go. So you can see there, all of my images now are just the befores. Let's just make sure that, yep, make sure that that looks good. And this is looking fantastic. So let's go ahead and save this out now. There we go. Save, and we're just going to call this before. Okay, so we now have before and afters of all of our images. It's going to help us actually display our Lightroom presets. So when a person's like, hey, what is this Lightroom preset actually doing? It's very easy to show them now. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you how to make an animated GIF out of what we just made. So I'm gonna just double click here in Photoshop. There we go. We're gonna go to our marketing folder and I'm gonna open up our before and the after. There we go. So you can see we have our before and the after. Let's just hold Shift and click and grab that. That'll go from one image to the other. Okay, so very easily you can see here's my before and after. So if you are making presets and you want to market them, it's very obvious now what it does on an entire group of images, which is so cool. Okay, so let's show you how to make an animated GIF because it's actually very easy to do. All we're going to do is go to Window and down to Timeline. So here in our timeline at the very bottom, you have a couple options. You have Create a Frame Animation or a Video Timeline. You want to click on Frame Animation. And let's just make this a little bit smaller because we don't need a giant frame. Okay, so to create our animated GIF, we're going to go to Create a Frame Animation. So let's go ahead and click there. Now it loads the current view as the first frame. So all I have to do is hit this plus button here on the bottom, and we're just going to turn that frame off. So if I click on my frames, we can see this is our first frame and this is our second frame. Then we want to choose our frame duration. So let's hold Shift and click on each of these frames, and then right underneath, you're going to see by default, it says 0 seconds. So let's go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go to other and I'm going to type in 1.5. Okay, so it's going to hold on the first frame for 1.5 seconds, then go to my second frame, and then this is going to loop infinitely. All right, so really great way to market your images. Now, if you were doing this as an Instagram post, which by the way, I've made this 1080 by 1080 on purpose because this is a perfect size for Instagram. So if I were to do an Instagram post and say, hey, I just created Lightroom preset packs. I'm super excited about them. You guys can, download them on my Etsy store, or I built a Shopify store. We'll show you how to do that like very briefly in just a bit. But you could do that on Instagram as a swiping before and after. So you could say swipe to see the before and after, and then that way maybe you wouldn't use a GIF, but you could show the swiping action. So still the same idea, but there's a lot of versatility that you can achieve with this sort of thing. So this looks great. Down here on our looping options, I'm going to choose forever, and then you can hit play and get a little preview of what your animated GIF is actually going to look like. Fantastic. So looking good. We get the idea. Yep, Lightroom presets, that's what they do. So now let's go ahead and export this out as a GIF. We're going to go to File, and then we're going to go to Export, and then I like this Save for Web dialog. Fantastic. So Save for Web, and then what we're going to do here in our little settings, we're going to go to GIF or GIF. Some people say GIF, some people say GIF. Alrighty, now everything is looking really good. We're at 1080 by 1080 pixels. You can change your settings here. There we go. My goal is to try to get a low file size. Okay, so you want to change your settings to make sure that your file size is as low as possible when you're uploading a GIF. So this looks great. Now here in my viewer, I can hit play and see how this looks. And I got one more little great tip for you here in Photoshop. This is something that I personally love, is you can actually click on this preview icon. And when you do that, it actually loads a preview in your web browser of choice. So you can see before you even save your image out, it actually loads a preview, and this is in Google Chrome right now. So everyone can see my Google Chrome browser now is showing me an animated preview of what my image looks like. And it's like, oh, cool. This is the before and after of what these Lightroom presets actually do. And looking at this, I'm like, okay, I love it, but I think the transition is a little too fast because 1.5 seconds is like, maybe let's just go to 2 seconds. So that saved me a bunch of time. I didn't have to even save my image or upload it to the web to see how it looks. I can literally see what it looks like on my web browser live, which is so cool. So back here in Photoshop, I'm just gonna hit cancel real quick, shift click on both of these, and we'll just change it to 2 seconds. Okay, we'll go back to save and let's click on preview. And now I can see what this looks like at 2 seconds. There we go. Oh, I have it set to JPEG. Let's make sure to go back to GIF. I'm like, why are we not animating here? All right, you wanna make sure to set this to GIF. Fantastic. And here we can see that, yeah, I think that's working really well. 2 seconds is not too much, but I definitely get the idea. So now we're gonna just go ahead and hit save, and we're gonna just save this in the folder we were just using. There we go. So we'll just call this marketing and preset vibrant, and then we'll do animation. Fantastic. And let's just go ahead and just double check. Here, I'm just gonna create a new Finder window. There we are. And then here on my desktop, we're gonna go to our marketing, and we're gonna go to our animation, and I'm gonna hit the space bar on this too, just to make sure that it is in fact animating. Yes, we are animating, and you are good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and do a little full screen, and we can talk about our next steps. So I really hope you guys are enjoying this so far. This is basically the exact process that we've used as a team at Phlearn.com for years to create Lightroom presets and then market them online. So if you guys are just joining us, today we're talking a lot about Lightroom, and we're gonna be getting into some more advanced editing in just a second. But a big part of what I wanted to introduce you to was the idea of making Lightroom presets and then selling those presets online to earn a little bit of extra income. It's a fantastic source of secondary income. I've been doing it for years, and I gotta say, it really is fantastic. So I just kind of wanted to open that door for you guys as well. So what we just did in Photoshop was created a marketing image that's going to help us actually sell our presets, right? Because you have to show, hey, this is what you're gonna learn, the before and after. And we've found through a lot of testing that using a grid of images works better than using a single image for showing before and after. That way people know that, hey, this preset actually does work with a variety of different photos and not just this one photograph. So if this is something that you guys are interested in, this is, I'm really happy to be able to share this with you. Okay, so we went through creating our Lightroom presets in Lightroom. We created virtual copies that allowed us to see both our original image and the image with the preset applied to it. And we went ahead and exported those virtual copies out, brought them into Photoshop, and created a grid with a before and after animated GIF. Okay, so we've got our presets are made in Lightroom. We've got our animated GIF is ready, so we can start marketing them. Of course, you'll want to write some copy. Now we need to go ahead and get our presets online. We need to go ahead and show you how to export your presets out of Lightroom and how to get them online. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So we're just gonna pop back here into Lightroom. Fantastic. So back here into Lightroom. There we go. And we're gonna show you how to export out your presets. So let's go to our develop module. There we go. And we're simply going to go to our preset, bright and vibrant. Here you go. We can see it's already made for us. Well, we made it. And we're gonna right click on it, and I'm gonna just simply go to show in Finder, and you can also go to export. So let's go down here to export. There we go. So we're gonna go to export, and I'm just gonna put this in the same exact folder. So we're gonna go to our live broadcast. We're gonna go, let's create a new folder in here. Lightroom presets, and here we have bright and vibrant. So we're gonna go ahead and hit save. Okay, so we saved it out. Let's just take a look here at our Lightroom presets, and here we have bright and vibrant.xmp. So now this preset is ready to go. It's ready to market. You can put this online. I do suggest having maybe a little video of you showing people how to use the preset if this is something that you're gonna put online and sell. Maybe just a little instructional PDF so they know how to actually install the Lightroom presets and things like that. But basically, you have everything that you need at this point. So you have your bright and vibrant.xmp. This is our Lightroom preset. So all anyone has to do now is simply go back into Lightroom and load this bright and vibrant.xmp. So let's go ahead and show you how to do this. So here in your presets, we're just gonna click on this little plus icon, and I'm gonna go to import presets. It's pretty easy. So import presets, there we go. And we're gonna go to bright and vibrant.xmp. And again, this is just something you would include in your download folder when you would market this online. So bright and vibrant.xmp, and then I'm gonna just click on import. There we go. And this is gonna say, I've already imported it. It's already here, which makes sense. But if this was a new Lightroom preset, everyone would be able to get this Lightroom preset and take advantage of it. All right, so let's go ahead and switch back to full screen, and we can talk about the next step. So we've made our Lightroom presets. We did our marketing in Photoshop. We've got a before and after GIF. We've exported out our Lightroom preset. And at this point, basically the only things that are left to do are you want to upload this Lightroom preset to some sort of marketplace, and you want to make sure to market it. Now, if you have an Instagram account, boom, that's your marketing already built in. If you've got a little bit of a following, people know you and they love your photos and they follow your work and they want to support you as an artist. So there's nothing at all, wrong with saying, hey, I just created new Lightroom presets. I would love it if you downloaded them, give them a shot, and let me know what you think. So again, I just want to provide an extra source of income for anyone out there who's looking for this because it's available to us all, and I think it's a fantastic way to just earn a little bit more. So we've done that. Now there are a couple of different options for getting your Lightroom presets online. We'll just take a real quick look here. I'm not affiliated with any of these websites, by the way. Just a little heads up there. But the first and probably the easiest way to do this is through Etsy. Okay, Etsy is a website where you can upload digital assets. People can pay for them online. They handle everything, and you can set up an Etsy store in under half an hour. So if I go to Lightroom presets, there we go. We're gonna see that we've got a lot of Lightroom presets already online for on Etsy. And you can see some of these, I mean, this Lightroom preset, for instance, and I'm not associated with these sellers, by the way. I just wanna show you this as an example. But this preset, and we just showed you how to make this, this has 97,000 sales, okay? It's got 5-star ratings from 4,000 different people. So 97,000 sales, times that by basically $3, and you can do the math yourself and realize, hey, this is actually a viable income source. This is not something that, you know, you're gonna earn. Well, I can't predict how much you'll wind up earning out of this, but there are a lot of folks out there doing a great job and earning a viable income source from Lightroom presets as well. So there are many, many, many examples here on Etsy alone. This one has 2,142 reviews. This is Lightroom Mobile. There we can see 30,000 sales on this one as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and just move that off the screen now. I just wanted to show you just a super quick example of people who are actually creating these Lightroom presets and marketing them well online. So this is definitely something that you can do. And hopefully by the end of today's broadcast, and well, as of right now, actually, you feel confident in doing it yourself and basically just follow this exact same process and you could have your own Etsy store online. And then from there, basically all you have to do is tell your family, friends, and your following on all your social media platforms about it. You know, just say like, hey, I've put these Lightroom presets online. I put a lot of energy and love into them. They're available for sale now, and then you can purchase them. And then your friends and family and internet followers, they can support you as well, because we all know that, you know, right now, especially having a secondary source of income would be very, very helpful. So yeah, anyway, that kind of concludes the whole, that we just wrapped a big bow around the whole idea of creating Lightroom presets and marketing them and then selling them online as well. So let me know here in the chat. I hope this kind of like struck a little chord with some of you guys, maybe some folks who were not necessarily thinking about creating Lightroom presets. Let me know in the chat if this is resonating with you, or you know, if it's something that you might think that you're gonna get into doing. And again, it's so fantastic that all this is totally built within Lightroom. You know, this, something that many, many people are already using. And if you're creating Lightroom presets for yourself to save yourself a little bit of time and give a little bit more of a cohesive look to your own photos, why not take a couple extra steps, go ahead and market them and put them online, and you'll be good to go. All right, so we have a couple questions here. We have, does the presets in Lightroom Mobile have a different setup? So basically you can use the same Lightroom presets, but the installation process for Lightroom Mobile is slightly different. So you'll just want to include instructions if you're going to be marketing them towards Lightroom Mobile. But you can create the presets in Lightroom Classic and they will work with Lightroom CC and Lightroom Mobile. The installation process is just a little bit different. So you want to make very clear with anyone who might be purchasing or downloading your presets on how to install those on your different on their different platforms. And you can find tutorials and instructions online on how to do that. Fantastic questions. All right, Christina says, great presentation. Henry asks, will there be a replay? Yes, there's definitely a replay. Fantastic. Yes, you'll be able to watch this later, most definitely. Okay, well, so glad. It looks like this really struck a chord with a lot of people, and I'm really glad to hear that a lot of folks out there found some use and some general value with this. Okay, so Lightroom presets, I feel like good, right? We covered them. We covered making them. We covered virtual copies. We showed you guys how to actually apply these to your photos. I think we're good. And let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is actually editing some of our images. So throughout the rest of today and tomorrow, I want to show you how to edit a variety of different photos, because I feel like Lightroom is such a powerful tool and it will work with many, many different types of photos. So we've just edited some photos here. You can see of a bright sunny day. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of our landscape photos. And I want to introduce you guys to a couple of tools that I find very helpful. Things like the graduated filter, the radial filter, and the adjustment brush. Okay, so let's jump back into Lightroom and show you how to do it. So let's go back. Here we are in Lightroom. Okay, we're gonna go to these images that I photographed a few months ago. This is actually in Joshua Tree in California. And for anyone who has not been to Joshua Tree, man, you are just in for a treat, because this is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. It's a national park, so all these trees are protected. So you get, you'll get the front row seat to these images. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start off editing our first image here in our stream. And then we can actually apply these edits to multiple photographs. Okay, so here you can see we are working on a raw photo. This is a Sony raw photo, so we see it's a .arw. Cody says, I'm a huge fan of national parks. Me too, Cody. Every time I'm in a national park, I find that kind of like all of my anxieties and fears and just general pent up feelings to kind of fade away. And being around nature, I find is really, it renews my spirit in a way that I can't really put my finger on, but I walk away from any experience that I've ever had in a national park and I'm just like, man, I got to do this more often. I just feel so good afterwards. So I'm really glad to hear that you enjoy them as well. So here we are. This is a friend of mine and I woke up at dawn, drove into Joshua Tree. Here, I'll actually show you the first photo in the season. So this is actually before sunrise here. I had a little headlamp with me. You know those little headlamps? Let me just grab some water here. Fantastic. So I had a little headlamp with me, and before the sun, you can see, is just starting to rise, set the camera on a tripod. You can actually see some stars in this photograph, which I didn't realize. Check those out. Stars. I was able to use my headlamp to actually light up these Joshua trees and create a really, really kind of surreal type of image. So woke up at dawn, went out to Joshua Tree, and was able to capture some of these photographs. So let's go ahead and show you guys how to edit some of these images. All right, Robert is saying, it's great that nature is now being recognized as a well-being tonic. It's so true. You know, I've heard that there's actually a term, I think it started in Japan. It's called like forest bathing. I could be wrong about this, the actual term, but it's basically like spending time in nature kind of like cleans you, like from the, like in an energy sense or something. I don't know. Check it out. Type in forest bathing. Anyway, let's go ahead and start our editing here. So the first thing I want to do is, if I zoom into some of these images, you're going to see that I've got a couple of dust spots here on my images. And that's just something that we're going to have, some nature and things like that. You're out there taking pictures, changing lenses on your cameras. You're going to get a little bit of a dust spot on your camera every now and then. That's not a big deal. You can always send it in and have it cleaned, and you can remove those dust spots fairly easily here in Lightroom. So let's go to our develop module and we'll show you how to remove these dust spots. We're going to turn off our before and after for now. There we go. All right. Let's do our before and after. There we are. So here on the very top right of your develop module, you're going to see spot removal tool, and you can also hit Q on your keyboard to get to your spot removal tool. Now, this is super, super easy. You can use your open and close bracket, there we go, to change the size of your brush, and simply click and drag, there we go, click and drag, and you're gonna see that Lightroom is so cool because it automatically finds there's actually like an area that has a clean, there we go, a clean background, and it replaces it. So there we go, we just go ahead and click there. And this is using our raw editor. So this is non-destructive. You can change this at any time, but any little dust spots you have on your image, super, super easy using the spot removal tool, or again, you can hit Q. Okay, we're looking great. Man, this was such a magical trip. I'm just transported. I love that about photography. Looking at these photos, I'm instantly transported back to this time in my life, and it's such a special memories. So we can see I was able to remove those dust spots really, really easily. So the next thing I want to do is add a little bit more definition to the bottom part of my image. I want to lighten it up a little bit because it's a little bit dark. And I want to make the top part a little bit darker. Now, this is just something that happens all the time with photography, right? There's always a part of your photo that's a little too bright, and there's always a part of your photo that's a little bit too dark. The reason is that cameras have a limited dynamic range. They're not as good as our eyes are at actually seeing all the detail from the brights down to the shadows. I was staring at a sunset just the other day, and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen this much color in any photograph or on any monitor in my entire life. And I realized that it was because my eyes have a higher dynamic range than cameras. So if that's something that you've struggled with, we're gonna show you a good way where you can basically bring more information into your shadows and bring information into your highlights as well. So what we're gonna do here is go back to our develop module, and I'm gonna take my shadow slider and we're just gonna drag this to the right, and that's just gonna bring the overall shadows in my entire image a little bit brighter. Okay, now if we wanna enhance this a little bit more, you can do that with tools like the adjustment brush. All right, so let's go ahead and show you how to do that. Now, our adjustment brush right up here is one of the most powerful tools, in my opinion, that Lightroom has to offer. So let's go ahead and click on the adjustment brush. If you've used the graduated or the radial filter, you'll be comfortable with the adjustment brush as well, because basically what this allows you to do is paint over certain areas in your images and then adjust the settings for just the areas that you paint. So let's go ahead and check it out. Now I'm gonna go ahead and paint over top of these trees here because I feel like they need to be a little bit brighter. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing in the background. These trees right up here. And there we go, looking really, really good. That's already off to a good start. However, you can see that basically it just looks like bright spots on the background as well. The reason being is because my settings right now are just set to bump my exposure up by 1. Okay, so it's bumping our exposure up, and this is going to affect our highlights as well as our shadows. So what I want to do is I want to take my exposure and I want to hit 0. So let's bring that back to 0. And it looks like we didn't do anything to our photo at all, but we still have the selected area. In fact, if I go right over here and I hover over this area and click there, there we go, you'll be able to see what areas we actually painted with our brush. So everything that's red currently is actually completely covered in red now. So what I want to do, instead of just bringing my exposure up, what we can do is go ahead and grab our shadow levels, and I can bring my shadow levels up as well. Okay, now if I go too high, you're obviously going to see some issues, especially where it starts interacting with the ground. But I'm able to bring a lot of detail into the shadow levels. And this is very simple because Lightroom is simply seeing that, you know, we have highlights in the background for the sky, and then we have shadows where the trees are. It's just a little bit darker. So, fantastic way to just basically select those darker areas and brighten them up a little bit. Now, down here in the bottom, you have a couple of tools. If you'll see, because I lightened up like the trunks of these trees and things like that, there we go, it's becoming a little bit obvious that we just grabbed this tool and painted some highlights in there, right? We're brightening the shadows. So my next suggestion would be to kind of fade this out a little bit. So we're gonna go to our eraser, and this is just allows me to erase things out. And I wanna use a large brush. So I'm gonna use my closed brackets here. You can also change your brush size right here. And I wanna bring my flow really low, which is gonna allow me to get a very smooth transition from visible to invisible here. And I'm just gonna kind of paint in little circles right over here. And this is gonna allow me to smooth out all of these areas. Okay, so I'm smoothing out the transition between highlight and shadow. It's just gonna create an effect that looks more natural and something that doesn't necessarily look like you just did it in post-production. All right, that's kind of like my goal for the most part, is I try to do like general edits in Lightroom that don't look like you did a bunch of editing, right? Like I like it when I apply an edit to my image and it looks great, but it doesn't look like it's been run through a bunch of computer programs. In my early days of editing, oh man, I used to crank all the sliders up so far and just give like, how much contrast can we possibly add to our images? And then after a little while, I was like, I should probably tone that down a little bit. So that's the look that I go for now, is I wanna make sure to enhance my images as much as I possibly can, but I really seem to, I like to keep it on the more subtle side. All right, so that's looking really great. And here we can continue to adjust our shadow levels, and I can bring up my color temperature a little bit warmer on that too. Oh, you know what, if I do that, it's gonna affect our sky. So we'll just do that as a whole. All right, so let's go ahead and show you the before and the after with that. I'm just gonna go, there we go. We need to click off our adjustment brush here. And here's the before and the after. There we go. And let's just zoom in to the right-hand side here. I'm gonna zoom in, we'll just do a 1/2 zoom. There we go. So we can see this doesn't really look edited in my opinion, but here on the left-hand side, we aren't able to make out a lot of detail in these trees. But in the right-hand side, this is my after, we can see, yeah, I can see all this detail in the shadows, and we didn't really have to do any advanced masking. I don't have like glowing areas around the trees because we were able to target just the shadows. I'm able to brighten those shadows and leave the highlights where they are, which gives us a very natural looking image and brought back a lot of detail. All right, fantastic. So let's go ahead and take a look at our image as a whole once more. And there's a couple more things that I want to do with our entire image. So I'm going to take the color temperature of our whole image and make this a little bit warmer. This was a sunrise, so I kind of want to enhance that a little bit, right? I want to say like, okay, let's experience that warmth. Let's experience all that color. Now, as far as our contrast is concerned, I actually, playing around with the contrast, I'm going to bring this up just a tiny bit. And looking at the photo as a whole, the middle strip there, where you see all these mountains in the background, let's go ahead and just zoom into a 1-to-1. Excuse me, I need a little more drink of water here. Okay, so this background area where we can see all of these mountains lit up here, that's looking fantastic. And I actually want to bring our focus as a viewer to the middle area of our image. So to do that, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna darken my sky down a little bit, and I'm gonna darken my foreground. And when we talk about darkening and lightening areas of your photos, that's gonna help your viewer decide which areas are important, because you're not gonna look at the dark areas, you're gonna be focusing on the lighter areas. And you don't have to go crazy with this. It can be subtle and still make a very big difference. So let's show you how to do it. I'm gonna grab our graduated filter because this is going to allow us to be very, very subtle with this. Now, with the graduated filter, my suggestion is to go ahead and zoom out. So I'm gonna go to a 1/4 zoom here, and then I'm gonna click on the top and then just drag this straight down, and I'm gonna hold the Shift key. There we go. So dragging this straight down from the top to the bottom, holding the shift key. And now what we're going to do is just bring our exposure down just a little bit. There we go. So we can see I'm just making this slightly darker. And now, because it's in our sky, I want to bring our color temperature a little bit cooler as well. It's going to make it a little bit more blue. There we go. So you can see it's a little bit more blue there. Fantastic. And we'll just pull that down a little bit. Who knew it was so easy to make your sky that much more vibrant, right? It takes like 2 seconds here in Lightroom. Okay, so that's looking really good for the sky. Next, I'm going to click on New, and we're going to put one on the ground. So I'm going to hold Shift and drag up from the bottom. There we go. And this time, we're going to leave the color temperature exactly where it is. And I'm going to just bring my exposure down just a little bit. Again, you don't have to go too far with this. This is something that you can just really stay subtle. And in my opinion, the more subtle, the better. Fantastic. Alrighty. And the chat is just blowing up with people, you know, looking at creating Lightroom presets and selling them online, talking about Envato and Creative Market and all these great marketplaces, including Gumroad. I'm so happy to see you guys are in the chat, and I can see that the little wheels in everyone's head are turning like, yes, I could do this. This is something that, you know, you could create your first Lightroom preset pack today. And I'm just so excited to see you guys lighting up in the chat about it. Fantastic. Okay, so this is looking really great. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go here to my Radial filter. There we go. And we're going to click here in the middle and drag out. Okay, we're going to drag out. But we can see my exposure is, I brought that up by 1 point. So we have 1 stop brighter, but it's actually doing the opposite of what I want. So we're going to take this option right down here to say invert. Okay, so now it's only going to be focused on the middle. Next thing I want to do is bring up my feathering, and that's going to help make this a lot more subtle. All right, let's go ahead and make this larger as well. And then the last thing that I want to do is bring down our exposure because it's just way too bright. Bringing it up, you know, a whole stop is not really that necessary in this case. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off. So, man, I think this image is looking great. I want a print of this. So, a little like pat myself on the back there. I took this great photo. Anyway, so very subtle, right? We made the sky just a little bit darker and a little bit more blue. We made the ground just a little bit darker, and I brightened up that horizon area just a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and see our before and after with this. There we go. Let's just go to let's go ahead and zoom out, and here we can see. So our image straight out of camera is on the left, okay? Straight out of camera, we can see it looks great, and it's got a lot of potential. Our image on the right is kind of like leaning into that potential a little bit more. We can see the sky has become a little bit more vibrant. We have this nice, beautiful fade from cool down to warm. We brought this area in our foreground just a little bit darker. I think we could actually enhance that a little bit more, maybe go a little bit darker here in the foreground. And we've brightened up this background. So our eyes now have a clear focal point as far as what they're going to look at in the photograph. And not only that, if we zoom in to these areas, our trees, we have more detail in the shadows than we did in our original photograph. So we can see a lot of possibility with these edits. Super simple tools to use, and they can make a big difference on our photos. All right, so let's go back to our grid view and see how we can apply this same exact principle to other images. So I'm gonna click on this image here, and we're gonna hold Control or Command, and now I'm gonna click on a couple of other images. So let's just hit this little plus icon so we can see this. There we go, Control or Command, and clicking on our other images. And then here in my library, I'm simply going to go to Sync Settings. Sync Settings. And now I get to choose which one of these settings I'd actually like to sync. Now everything looks great. Local adjustments, I want to do our graduated and radial filter, but I'm going to turn off the brush for now. And Kent asks a great question. Can you access and adjust the brush gradient after the fact as well. And yes, you most definitely can. So let's go over here to synchronize. There we go. And you can see it automatically applies to our other images. Some of these are a little bit strong, but you can see overall it's worked really well. I'm just gonna take a quick restroom break. I'll be very quick. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to access your graduated filters and then make some changes after the fact. I'll be right back. All right. And Mia says, this is the perfect time to refill my coffee. I know, right? Fantastic. Okay, so we are back, and let's go ahead and show you guys how to then update any of your graduated filters, radial filters, adjustment brushes, even after you've made them. So let's go ahead and double click on our first image. We're gonna go back to our develop module. So back to our develop module. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at our full screen image. There we go, and fantastic. Let's just go ahead and make sure we're clicked on this image here. Okay, so if we want to get back to any of our filters or any of our adjustments, this is one of the things that I love the most about Lightroom is that it's totally non-destructive. In fact, at any point in time, you can go back and get to your original image, which is fantastic. John Williams says, I hope you washed a young man. I don't know if you can see it, but yes. My bathroom etiquette on the live broadcast. Anyway, so let's go back to our develop module, and here we can go ahead and click on our graduated filters. And now with our graduated filters selected, we can then hover right over any of the graduated filters that we made. All right, I'm gonna click on this and you can see exactly where in fact it was edited. I'm gonna click on this bottom one and you can access this as well. And you can see it automatically brings up all the properties. So I'm gonna just zoom out just a little bit here. There we go, fantastic. So zooming out a little bit more, and we're gonna go ahead and take our exposure and drag this down a little bit more. I felt like it could use just a little bit darker to help us bring the focus to the original image. And I find this is very, very helpful. You can choose right here where it says show edit pins on the very bottom. You can choose this to be visible always, when selected, never, or auto. Okay, I'm gonna go to auto. And the reason I like this is because if I hover over my image, let's just put this back to I'm gonna put this to a fit zoom. If I hover over my image, I can see all my edit pins and I can make those adjustments. But as soon as I go away from the image, everything fades away and I'm able to just see my image as a whole, which I find to be very, very helpful. That way I can just see what my edits look like and I don't get distracted with all these little edit pins. So I do suggest having this show edit pins set to auto. Now, my other big advice whenever we're editing in Lightroom or even in Photoshop is, of course, I love to edit with my image as big as possible, right? I wanna see like, yes, show me the full size image. But I find it's also very, very helpful to take a look at your image scaled down a little bit, okay? So I'm gonna go to my zoom right here, and we're just gonna go to like a 1/8 zoom, okay? And I realize on the broadcast, I won't keep it this small for long because I know it's small on everyone's screen, but I just wanna encourage you to take a look at your images at 1/8 zoom. Go ahead and zoom out. And this is going to allow you to see your edits as a whole. How do they affect the bright and dark levels of your image as a whole? I find that if you're too zoomed in, it can be kind of tough to tell. So when you zoom way out, it gets a lot more obvious. And in this case, I think I've made the dark areas just a little bit too dark, or maybe it's a little bit too concentrated. Like if you make your graduated filter shorter, actually, I think that is looking pretty good. I actually do like that, making it shorter. I was gonna click and make this a little bit more subtle, but clicking, I actually think this is really nice. It kind of fits with the landscape a little bit better, in my opinion. All right, let's click on the top one. Let's go ahead and bring this down too and see how we like that. Fantastic. Maybe I'll bring this up a little bit more. Now, let's go ahead and bring that back down again. All right. Looking good. And you know what? I do like the transition of this one on the bottom. Excuse me. But I think I made it just a little bit too dark. So let's go ahead and just bring it up a little bit brighter. And I'm going to bring my contrast down as well. There we go. And I'm going to take our saturation down just a tiny bit as well. So that's going to draw even less attention to those areas. Okay. So I don't think I would have seen those changes if I was looking at my image full size. Let's go back to fit so you guys can see and you know, kind of get an idea for what we did here. But I just want to encourage you, whenever you're editing in Photoshop or Lightroom, you know, definitely full screen, beautiful, right? We all want to see those big, beautiful full screen images. Also take a look at them really, really zoomed out, and that's going to give you an appreciation for the overall light levels, the saturation, and kind of how they look, because especially in these days and age, like most people are going to be viewing your images on their phone, right? So you want to make sure that everything works at a small scale as well as a large scale. So just make sure you zoom out whenever you're editing. It's going to help you out a ton. Okay, fantastic. So let's go ahead and take a look back at our grid view. And here we can see those edits worked really well. And I think they applied very well to these other photos, but this one, just a little bit too dark. So let's go ahead and double click on this photograph now. We're gonna go to our develop module. And this time I just wanna bring my shadow levels up nice and bright. There we go. That looks great. And if I wanna get back to my graduated filters, because I was able to apply these, there we go. I was able to apply these to multiple photographs. Let's go ahead and zoom out. There we go. I can now still adjust these on this image as well. So everything that we do in Lightroom is completely non-destructive. All right, here we go. And we're gonna go ahead and grab our adjustment brush and basically do the same thing. The reason I didn't want to use the same adjustment brush from one image to another is that, there we go, is that I'm using this to brighten up details in foreground elements like my trees, and we didn't have, the trees weren't in the same place from one image to another. So it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to do that, right? We would want to make sure that everything was in the same place. Okay, let's go ahead and bring our exposure back down to 0. All right, and we're just gonna bring up our shadow levels. And again, this is just in these places. Okay, just in the areas where I painted with my adjustment brush. And let's go ahead and take a look at our before and after. Maybe I'll bring this up a little bit more. Fantastic. So here's our before. You can see, wow, that's a big difference we were able to make with this photograph, right? You can see all these foreground elements here, we're not really seeing so much detail. And in the after, I've got a lot more detail. Overall, I think I made it a little bit too warm, my color temperature. So we'll just click and drag our color temperature slider back down a little bit. Yeah, I think that's helping out. So we still have all of the essence of the original image, but here we go. we can actually see all of the detail in the final as well. Alrighty. Well, this is looking really, really good. Let's go back to full screen on this image here that we edited, because I think we've done a fantastic, fantastic job. Okay. Cool. Well, I hope you guys are enjoying hanging out with me and learning Lightroom. We've gone over a ton so far, from creating presets in Lightroom, using virtual copies and exporting those. We created a grid in Photoshop to show the before and afters of all of our Lightroom presets applied. We showed you how to make an animated GIF of that grid as well. And then we came back here into Lightroom and we're applying more advanced editing, like our spot healing to get rid of any dust spots and things like that. We use the graduated, the radial, and the adjustment brush as well. So before we get any further, we just want to remind you guys to take a look at the Daily Creative Challenge. You can actually join the Daily Creative Challenge right here on behance.net/live. Just click on the challenge tab on the top right, and I'm going to go over some of the challenges. Kathleen earlier this morning was showing you guys how to use the frame tool, and we've got a couple great entries. So let's go ahead and just pop over to Discord here. Now, if you guys haven't already done so, be sure to join the Photoshop channel here on Discord, and then you can do that right under the Daily Creative Challenge tab. So you'll find all the information you need to know there. For those of you who don't know, Discord is like a chat server, so you can chat with other creative people from around the world, and you can also submit your images. And in this case, I'm going to be highlighting some of our entries from the Daily Creative Challenge. Excuse me, it's a drink of water. My throat's I've been talking a lot lately. Okay, so here we go, day 2. And by the way, I know that the Daily Creative Challenge with Kathleen was literally right before my broadcast, so I know that we all haven't had a ton of time, but Kathleen was showing us how to use frames in Photoshop, which I thought is such a cool tool, because basically it's kind of like what we did earlier today when we set up that grid system and then use clipping masks. Basically, you can create frames here in Photoshop and then fill that area out with your photographs. Okay, so we've got different images. This looks like, let's see, this is from Susan Holt. Susan, awesome job. These look like photos maybe from a vacation. This photo here, man, I don't know where that is. It looks like from Thailand or something like that. That's a place that I would like to go to. In fact, I actually just made a Photoshop composite inspired by the movie Avatar with floating mountains. I'll show you guys that in just a second. And I used stock images very similar to this one here in the center. So really, really cool use of the frame tool. Overall, Susan, your composition is great. I really love the mix of these circular elements as well as these rectangular elements, and you pulled together everything really well. I love the blue background that you included. It ties in really, really well with all the photos that you've chosen, because, you know, they are all like, you know, they're blue as well. So everything is kind of like, to me, like the same language is all coming together, and I get an idea of like, hey, this is your awesome vacation, you know, hanging out in the waterfall and, you know, taking pictures of islands from. How did you even get this photo on the bottom right? I don't know. Were you on a parasail or an airplane or something? That's really, really cool. Or maybe drone. I always forget about drones, right? It's like, oh yeah, drones. You can take pictures from the air. There we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next image. This is from EMX. Fantastic. So a day at the Portugal dos Pequenitos. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds like a place that I'd like to go to. The two pequeñitos? Pequeños? The two little small houses, maybe? I don't know what this means. Oh, maybe these are, yeah, that's what they are. They're miniature houses. Look at that. How cool is this? Looks like you're maybe a baby, could be a family member here. They look like supersized. That is super fun. Look at these small houses. Wow, I want to go to Portugal and hang out here and do a photo shoot there. They look like 100% like lifelike. They're made out of like stone and actual building materials. but they're smaller. This is super cute. All right, so we've got a similar layout here, and you've chosen different background colors. In this case, you've chosen a white background color for this grid as well. And I think it's working really, really well, especially because we have so much white in our frames as well. And way to bring this place to my attention, because now I'm like, if I'm in Portugal, I'm definitely visiting there. I want to do a photo shoot, like a drama, fashion shoot with like a giant person in this small houses. I'm loving it. All right, let me just grab another drink of water. All right, this image is super cool because we're combining different art. Here we have some, looks like some oil painting here. We've got feeding the birds right from your hand, which is so cool. Looks like we've got some vacation photos as well as art, and then really great font choice here with the Daily Creative Challenge. And I see you've chosen to remove the border here on this element, which I think works really well also. All right, so that was Ahmad R. Okay, KK also. KK, by the way, is what my mom calls me because my full name is Aaron Kerry Nace. My middle name is Kerry, and so it starts with the letter K, and my mom calls me KK. Anyway, you guys get to be part of the KK group, the people who know me as KK as well. I love what you've done here. All of these birds, and we got a frog. We got mostly birds. We got a frog and a squirrel. Super cool. Looks like all photos that you've taken. Beautiful photographs. I love this script here, and I really like what you did with this bamboo illustration here in the background. Just kind of brings together all of the nature elements, and it looks like you customized the original template quite a bit. So great job there, KK. And then we have Pablo L. Gomez also missing Tenerife so much. I can see why. This place looks absolutely beautiful. Look at that. I haven't seen any place like that in my whole life. Really, really great place to put your vacation photos. And I was just browsing through these and I'm like, you know what? Doing like a Facebook banner or something like that in this style would actually be such a good use of this sort of technique. You could also make your own postcards if you wanted to, like make all these frames and then print them out and send them to your friends. Really, really cool. Really, really cool uses of all of these frames. So to everyone who submitted to the Daily Creative Challenge, thank you so much. And if you haven't submitted to the Daily Creative Challenge or haven't looked into it in the past, here on Adobe Live on behance.net/live, we produce daily creative challenges for Illustrator as well as Photoshop every single day. So you guys can tune in, and it's just such a good way to polish up with your skills in all of the different programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, and more. So plus, you get to connect with the online community here, which I think is absolutely fantastic, and get your work featured here on Adobe Creative, on Adobe Live. So thank you so much for everyone who's entered. Let's go ahead and take a look at our schedule. After me, we've got some really, really great things coming up. We've got speaking of daily creative challenges, we've got Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Andrew. Next, we're taking a look at editorial design with Shanti. The Adobe XD Creative Challenge with Andrea. That's going to be super cool. Adobe XD is something that I don't have a lot of experience with, but I've seen some really cool things that you can do with it. And I'm like, okay, that's the next Adobe program that I want to learn is XD. It just seems like you can do so much with it. I like, everything from designing like templates to PDFs, and it looks like you can even do like web layouts and things as well. So XD is such a cool program. Doodle therapy, which I'm definitely checking into today. I've got my Wacom tablet here, and I'm going to be doodle therapy in my life away. And then we have our design off with Voodoo Val and Wade. That's going to be so much fun. Those design offs are an absolute blast. Alrighty, so be sure to stick around for the rest of the broadcast. You're going to have a really, really good time. Alrighty, we've got about 15 minutes left. Let's go ahead and get back into Lightroom. So let's hit G for our grid view to get back into Lightroom. We're gonna go ahead and minus this out just a little bit. All right, So we're continuing on with the same trend here, and we're going to be taking a look at some more images from Joshua Tree. So let's go ahead and take a look at a kind of an environmental portrait I took of my friend here in Joshua Tree. There are just all these beautiful large rocks, and we took the advantage to get some really nice photos, basically, simplifying the image quite a bit and just drawing attention to our subject. So what we're going to do now is kind of enhance that goal a little bit with drawing even more attention to our subject. So what we want to do is start off with our develop module. There we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at our image as a whole. And I want to start with my radial filters. So something that I do quite a bit in Lightroom is I add my own vignettes. The reason I do this is that it helps us focus on a certain area of our image. And in this case, I really want the viewers to be focusing on my subject here. So let's go to our radial filter. Okay, we're going to click and drag out from the center. Now, the real key with using a radial filter is you don't want it to look like you did anything, right? You want it to look very, very subtle. So we're clicking and dragging out. You can see I can adjust my exposure, and as of right now, we are going to make sure that I click this invert option because it was brightening everything but my subject, and we want the opposite. The next thing I want to do is bring up my feathering, and that's just going to soften these edges so much that it's going to start to look a lot more natural. There we go, looking good. And you may have guessed it right now, but our exposure is way too bright. So we just want to bring that down. And one thing that I kind of want to emphasize here is that when you make these adjustments, they don't have to be very strong. They can be subtle and still make a big difference in your overall image. So that's looking really great so far. So we just brightened up our subject. Now, this is non-destructive. I can change this at any time, and check this out. If I want to, I can move this around my image. So I could draw, highlights really wherever I want to. And I use that quite often when I'm editing photos, because sometimes I'm not always aware of which areas should be brighter and darker. So I'll make a little hotspot like this, and I'll kind of move it around and be like, oh, it actually looks really cool to, highlight this portion of the rock or something like that. Now in this photo, it's fairly obvious, but sometimes it can be a little bit tough to know which areas we want to make brighter and darker. So I just recommend creating a graduated filter like this and moving it around. All right, fantastic. So next we're going to go ahead and create another one. So if you want to create multiple radial filters, all you have to do is click on New right here, and you can just go ahead and create your new one. So let's click and drag out here. There we go. And then this time we want to bring our exposure down just a little bit. Looking fantastic. And I'm going to center this right around our subject. And we're going to go ahead and feather this out a little bit more, and we're going to make this larger. Now, when we get to this point where I want to make this even larger, I just need to zoom out, and you can do that by clicking up here on the top left. So let's go to 1/8 view. There we go. And we're just going to make this a little bit larger. Fantastic. And I'm just working with my feathering here, and there I can see I want to kind of center this around my subject as well. So let's go ahead and bring our exposure down a little bit more with this. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger also. There we go. That's looking really, really good. So let's go ahead and click off of our graduated filter for now. And we're just going to check out our before and our after. Now let's go back to our fit view. And we can see here, look at that difference we were able to make. I love these sort of changes because they don't look fake in any way. It doesn't necessarily look like we did a lot of post-production in the after image, but when we compare the before and the after on the left and the right, you can see it makes it a lot more apparent where we should be focusing with the image on the right-hand side. So with the image on the left, it's great, and we do have a subject standing off the rock, so, not to say we don't have a focal point, but the image is relatively flat as far as our focus is concerned. And the image on the right all we did is added a couple graduated filters, which help to draw our attention towards the center here, and all of a sudden, I'm guided as a viewer directly to the center of this image. So we can see how powerful these filters are. They can completely change your entire perception of an image. Now, again, if you want to make changes, simply click back on your graduated filter, okay? And we're gonna click on this one. I think I just made this a little bit brighter than I wanted. So it's at 0.95. I'm just gonna click down to 0.8 now. And of course, this can be changed at any time. So let's go ahead and just turn that off. And that looks really, really good. So here we have our original and our after. We can see a couple graduated filters and we are good to go. All right, looking fantastic. We've got just a little bit more time on today's broadcast. Let's go ahead and take this photo here and show you how to brighten up these shadow levels, and then we're gonna be good to go. So here we're gonna go back to our develop module. Okay, let's just go ahead and take a look at our full screen here. Okay, and with our full screen image, now we're gonna go ahead and take our shadow levels and start bringing these up. Now, I'm okay doing this with my image as a whole because I did have a lot of dark shadow levels in my image, and I really wanna just like kind of tune those in. Okay, looking really good. Now, the other thing that I think we could use is a little bit of a crop with this photo, because the Joshua tree here in the center looks great, but a lot of this information on the right-hand side and the left-hand side is just kind of not really necessary for this photo. So let's go to our crop tool. And I love the crop tool in Lightroom because it's completely non-destructive, and you can choose whatever aspect ratio that you want. So if you're uploading to Instagram, you know, square is what's up, right? So we're just gonna go to our square aspect ratio, and I'm gonna go ahead and center this tree in my image. So that looks fantastic. Let's go ahead and hit enter there, and we can see the tree is pretty well squared up. You can also rotate your canvas with the crop tool. So R will get you to the crop tool in Lightroom, and then you can click on any of the corners and drag this in or out, which is fantastic. And then you can also click right here on the edge and simply rotate. So if, you know, in this case, the tree wasn't, you know, straight up and down because my camera was not straight up and down. It's not the tree's fault, it's the photographer's fault. But here we can see now the tree is much better centered in the photo. And overall, this composition just works quite a bit better. The reason being is that the focus point is in the center, and I got rid of a lot of stuff that kind of like wasn't helping to tell that story. All right, let's go back into our graduated filter here. I'm gonna just zoom out a little bit. Let's go to a 1/4 zoom. We're gonna click and drag from the bottom up, okay? And this time we're gonna bring our exposure down just a little bit. We'll bring our contrast down as well. And we're just making the ground a little bit darker. And this is gonna help us focus more on the area that we want. Let's grab a graduated filter. Make sure we invert this so it's just visible here in the center area. There we go. This is gonna look so good. And we're gonna bring our exposure back down to 0. We just wanna bring our shadow level up a little bit. There we go. That looks fantastic. And I actually wanna create another one of these where we do bring our exposure up just a little bit. And again, just centered on the middle of the image. So let's go ahead and feather this up. We're gonna invert this. And instead of bringing our exposure all the way to +1, we'll just do a very, very subtle, like a plus 0.25. There we go. So let's go ahead and take a look at our before and the after here. So obviously we cropped this out, but what we were also able to do is draw less attention to the areas that we don't really need to be looking at as much, you know, the bottom of the frame, right? Obviously the center of the subject is kind of where we want to draw our attention, and we're able to brighten these areas up. So not only does our exposure benefit from these changes, but overall as a viewer, now the subject isn't so dark against a light background, and it helps the image out as a whole. Alrighty, fantastic. Hi, little buddy. My dog just came to say hi. Hi. Yeah, looking good, huh? He's like, great job in Lightroom today, Aaron. You're doing great. Alrighty. Well, there we are, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today, learning all kinds of wonderful tips and tricks here in Lightroom, from presets through marketing and talking about selling your presets through creative websites like Etsy or Gumroad and things like that, and bringing things back a little bit more advanced here in Lightroom, showing you how to use things like your graduated and radial and adjustment brushes. So join us tomorrow where we're taking a deeper dive into more complex editing in Lightroom, where we're gonna show you how to edit a multitude of different photos from many different backgrounds. So we're gonna be going over portraits and landscapes and urban environments and long exposures, and showing you how to take just about any type of photo that you're going to be taking. My goal is to show you how to improve those photos using simple tools and techniques here in Lightroom. Alrighty, well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast. Everyone's been fantastic here in the chat. I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow, and don't forget about the Adobe Creative Challenge. Alrighty, thank you so much again, and I'll see you soon. All right, we're just gonna pull up our schedule here so we can see right up next. There we go. We've got our Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Andrew. Be sure to stick around that. We've got our editorial design with Shanti, and then our Adobe XD Creative Challenge with Andrea, Doodle Therapy with Alice, and then our Design Off with Voodoo Val and Wade. Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.